honey. Yes, yes. Rise and shine, rise and shine. I'm feeling good this morning. Happy Saturday. And welcome back. Welcome back. I'm a bit annoyed at looking at the responses of an overwhelming number of Black people who are lamenting the death, the timely death, shall I say, of this toxic ass relationship coach. I'm going to refer to him as KS. I'm not going to say his name. I don't even think his name is worth stating out loud. I've never actually stated his name, purposefully so. But it annoys me looking at the responses to see how many people are actually I gotta take my time with this one. I gotta take my time. Dragon's blood. These things smell so good, y'all. Smell so good. So, of course, I've expressed my perspective on this very timely transformation that is happening, right? I think it's a shift. And I said it was going to be a shift in the universe. Like, you can feel when a shift is happening in the universe. And I said that. And lo and behold, look what happens. Mother Nature delivered justice to all the single Black mothers on behalf of this diabolical creature, KS. He needed to die. Honestly, he needed to die. And I've made this statement. I said this on a few posts. I made the comment that what a timely death. Like, what a timely gift to all of the single Black mothers this man pushed underneath the bus. Now, granted, I don't have any children. However, I am 38 years old. I desire to have children. But I'm very selective. I'm very particular about who I choose to procreate with. And if I even choose to procreate, right? And as I was saying in my previous video on Is He Dead? This is like when the news was first breaking and everyone was like all frantic about, oh my gosh, reports say that he died. He had a heart attack. And when I first saw the initial post, I celebrated. Yes, I did. I screamed so loud. I almost forgot I had neighbors. I screamed so loud. It was just such a rejoicing moment to let that out, because this man has been nothing but toxicity towards Black women and the Black community as a whole. Right? Because what affects the Black woman affects the Black man, and sometimes we choose to forget that. We act as though we can stand independent of each other. No, that's not how it works. So when you berate the Black woman, you're berating yourself as a Black man. And vice versa, right? Like I said before, there are actually female versions of KS, right? Who actually devote their whole entire channel to tearing down the Black man. And I don't agree with that either. Wrong is wrong. And in fact, wrong is wrong, right? It's like we want to say that justice is due when a person does wrong, right? But somehow people are having a bit of a syndrome, I would say. Like, how can you identify with this character who did not mean well by the Black community, right? How are people having this fake ass, emotional, visceral response to the death of this character. He was a character. Nothing much more, as I look at it, than a character. People are like, oh, it's still alive. It's no. He dedicated, he devoted his entire platform, and he did that very intentionally, shall we say. It's not no mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing with his platform. And in fact, I actually saw one video. Now, granted, I didn't watch this man. I came across him. I was on a dating site, and this person who expressed interest in me, he was like, on this profile, he said something about KS. He was like, oh, something to the effect of, oh, if you're not up on KS, then I'm not interested in you, or something like that, right? He had messaged me. And so I had to point that out, that statement, that comment that he had on his profile, and I'm just like, who the fuck is KS? I don't know who the hell this guy is. And he was like, oh, you don't know? He thought I was fluffing. I'm like, I do not know. Why should I follow a person who spews such self-hatred towards black women? Like, why would I follow a person like that? Like, that's the sick part. I was at work yesterday, and my colleague overheard me kind of having my own personal moment, still rejoicing over this man's death. And he's like, oh, what's going on? He was like trying to be nosy. He was like, oh, what's going on? What's that? And I told him, he didn't know who this person was. And by the way, my colleague is Italian, he's white. And I explained to him in a nutshell who this guy was. And I'm like, yes, I'm glad that he died. And he was like, how old was he? And I think he was like, what, 56, 57 years old? And then he was like, oh, that's sick. Even his reaction, like, how can you say that my rejoicing is sick? I don't get it. How can people say that it's sick to rejoice over a person's death, right? Now, granted, I see death totally different than the average person. But I think that karma has a way of showing up at the right time. And this is just his karma. It's not so much focusing on the person, right? This fucking nothing. I call him nothingness, right? It's not so much focusing on him as it is rejoicing over the energy shift. Rejoicing over what is due, like cosmically, right? Like, this is his karmic punishment, so to speak, right? This is like his justice. This is what's supposed to happen. So for people who are very spiritual beings, right, who have a connection with the universe, with like a deep-rooted connection with the universe, of course you will rejoice over something that is supposed to happen cosmically, right? Like, it was just a matter of time, yo. And it's the irony of it, to see that this man who spewed such silly ass rhetoric, and that people would hold on to every bite that he said, mostly men, but even women somehow, like, these women had to be damaged. Like, how can you take in this negative information into your psyche and digest it, for a man to say that a woman deserves less than what she deserves, and to put a woman down, and to say that she's not valuable. And you got men saying, oh, yeah, he was speaking truth, co-signing. That's not truth. That's his truth, though, right? It'll be one thing where, okay, he's getting on here speaking his truth, because, like, this is social media, right? We have the privilege, the opportunity to express ourselves, to speak our truths, and, right, that's everyone's right. But it's another thing when you are an influencer, right? It's to the level of millions of people are watching you. You are impacting the minds of millions of people. It's beyond just, oh, you're just speaking your own personal truth. No, you are influencing people. You are shaping the minds, and it just irks me to see how many people hold this character up as if he was God. Like, how can you lament his death, if anything? But that's just me. So yes, I felt very relieved to see that this man had passed away. And I look at people's response and the general response. I think a lot of people are holding back though, right? But from what we can see, most people are actually saying they're sad. They're sad that he passed away. Like, what is there to be sad about? It's hard for me to wrap my mind around it. Like I said, I think it's a syndrome. There's a syndrome for that, where people identify with the abuser, and you know, they're so attached to the abuser that it's difficult for them to actually develop a rational way of seeing the situation, right? Those same people who were fans of this man and are lamenting his death and are confronting people like myself and saying, how can you rejoice in a man's passing? These are the same people who actually said that child abuse, they justify child abuse to say it's right. They want to say, oh no, it's discipline, right? You see how they kind of spin? They distort the truth, right? They distort the reality. Even with him, they're saying, oh, well, he was just holding women accountable. That's a distortion. He's not holding women accountable. He's berating women. He's devaluing women. He's putting women down. That's not speaking the truth. And I just recently decoded what he was saying, what he was intending to say regarding women over 35. Now, I was reading a comment on my previous video, and this woman, she made a joke to say, oh, I guess leftover meat is not that bad after all, right? I thought it was funny just at face value. I mean, anything is funny. Any joke is funny, I think, at this point. Considering this man is no longer here, and he's no longer powerful. He can no longer get on here and do his lives and infiltrate the minds of fragile women and men. But I knew it was an inside joke, right? And then I come to find out that basically this man had been retorting that women 35 and older are leftovers, like are useless. Like, how can you let that come out of your mouth? You can tell a man that hates his mother. And I made a video about this before, like black men who hate their mothers, like it's reflected in their relationships towards women. He hates his mother. You can tell he hates women. He hates black women specifically. And so I just think that's the sick part, right? Like, for people to say that me and other people are sick, to rejoice on this shift that is happening, rightfully so, in the universe with respect to his cosmic karma, though, I think those people are sick. Like, you're going to sit up here and question us rejoicing. No, question your own psyche. Like, how the fuck can you sit up here and worship this man? That, to me, is a sick part. To worship a person who does not mean well for anybody in the black community, right? If you're putting down black women, if you're devaluing black women, this is publicly, This man has millions of followers where he crossed over the racial boundaries, right? So you got people from all other races watching this man, were watching him. And to say something like this, it's just like worse than the slave master, right? Where we talk about how the slave master would do these demonstrations with black men and strip them naked, bringing them down to size in front of the black woman, hanging them on a tree. That's essentially symbolically what this man was doing to black women in front of the entire world. But you want to sit up here and say, oh, he was speaking facts because it was entertainment for you, right? It made you feel good as a man. It validated your lack of self-worth. Because as I said before, the black woman is a reflection of the black man. So if you are celebrating and you are worshiping what this man was saying and berating black women, devaluing black women, then that's how you feel about yourself, and that's how you feel about the black race as a whole. So, no, it's not about celebrating the death of this one particular man. It's celebrating the death of what he stood for and seeing that, yes, justice is served. It's just natural. Those natural consequences, right? It's natural justice, and that's what people fail to remember that. They forget about there are universal laws at play. You know it was coming for his ass, and he got it at a timely manner, right? Like, what do you say? Mother's Day is tomorrow. And so, like I said, the people who worship this man, right, and who held on to every word that he said, those are the same people who think that abusing children is discipline. And this was a couple years ago. I think I made a post, and like, you people were laughing about it, right? We're talking about people, adults, right? Adult black people who grew up getting beatings, and then the response is laughter. Now I get it, people laugh at things that make them feel uncomfortable, but I would like to say that we are much more mature to pause for a second and not laugh at something that caused so much trauma and pain in a person's life, right? And I talk about that in my book, American Dreamer, my autobiography, about my own experience with that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here, because I think that it's important to set this context, right? When we talk about sickness impacting the minds, the psyche of black people, it's an understatement. And I think this going back to what's happening now, right, with KS and people's reaction, and how a lot of people are taking to this fake public empathic response and regarding his death. I say it's fake. Even a lot of these YouTube personalities and these fake woke conscious leaders. I even was surprised to see Dr. Umar Johnson. Like, how the fuck can you sit up here and say rest in peace to this man, rest in heaven to this man? And he's going to say, he made this statement on his post to say, oh, he prays that the ancestors shrink his thoughts and expand, the things that he did well, when it's just like, no. This man had made it clear that when he started his platform, it was targeted towards, he did have an intention to kind of speak life into black men, empower black men. He said this in a video that did not take off. He said he started with that intention, but nobody wanted to listen to that. Nobody tuned in. It wasn't until he took the opposite approach of tearing down the black woman, the mother of all creation, that, look, millions of followers. And it's like almost like overnight success, yo. He rose to fame very quickly. Okay, that, like, people who are really in tune with the universe, that should speak something right there, because we know who controls these platforms. A lot of y'all are disillusioned to think that, oh, it's something about yourself. It's something, you're just so great to amass a huge following and a lot of views. No, it's something, yes, it's something about your rhetoric. It's something about your intentions. It's something about you being in alignment with the cause, right? The grand scheme of things of what they want to do on a macro level, and as it relates to the black community. People have to understand that there are a lot of things that are happening on many different layers, right? I don't think people see the big picture. So people are caught up in like, oh my gosh, I feel so sad. No, that wasn't going to last for too long anyway. I'm glad that was short-lived. But what saddens me is how people give in for wanting to get attention and they change their message. Like, and we wonder why the black community struggles to rise. It's because you're willing to sacrifice your own, like you're willing to sacrifice your own counterpart, the black woman, for views, for fame, for a little bit of coins. He wasn't wealthy. And I have to laugh here, y'all. I have to insert a comedic relief for myself in this moment as I reflect on the irony of his message, because he's going to talk about high value this and high value that. How value was he to die, of a heart attack? Well, how was he? 57? Of a heart attack, yo. He want to sit up here and say, oh, the older a woman gets, the more her value decreases, right? So as she ages, her value decreases, right? But then you're going to take the flip side for black men. As they age, their value increases. Bullshit. His value clearly didn't increase. The universe didn't even see fit for his ass to live. That right there should be something. A lot of people survive heart attacks. My mom actually had, my mom has had, every fucking debilitation under the sun. And she's had heart attacks. And she's even had COVID. She was hospitalized during the first year COVID came out. In the holiday, the Christmas time of COVID 2020. With my sister. And she survived COVID. And this is a woman who has had heart attacks, got high blood pressure, all this negative shit, diabetes, everything, you name it. She got the whole package, right? And she survived it. People survive heart attacks, but the universe didn't see fit for his ass to survive that shit. The irony. I think we all should be laughing. It's the universe, man. It's your own karma. It's your own karma. People get at me, yo, when they come with this fake empathy. I'm about realness. I'm about just expressing myself, being true. People take offense because they're not resting in their own truth. They are displaying a reaction that they think is socially acceptable. Right? It's like people are on the wave of just saying what they think is going to get the most likes, the most views, the most and agreement, right? And that to me is sad. That to me is sick. Going back to this whole notion regarding child abuse, I have to be a bit transparent, which I've said this before, where yes, I did grow up in a two-parent household. However, my mom, she was very strict. And yes, in my book, I do talk about how I suffered physical abuse and emotional abuse from my mom, which has created a division between me and certain family members at one point, because they apparently don't see it as abuse. just as I said earlier, how many black people laugh. And when I was making the comment on my post, this was like years ago, about like it's fucked up. You know, it's unfortunate that black children have to be disciplined in such a way, right? And this is how they learn like what love is, just by being beat to pulp and being damn near beat to death, right? Being broken down psychologically, emotionally, physically. This is how black people, children who become men and women, learn, okay, this is what love looks like. And we wonder why as adults. We wonder why. There's so much wrong with the black community. But yes, that was my experience. And this isn't new information. I've shared this before, where it was pretty intense. It was a ritual. It was something that I felt I shouldn't have gone through as a child. And it's like I said, so many layers to this, because this is the way my mom would discipline me and my sister. Now, granted, you ask my sister, she would say, oh, it was discipline. That wasn't abuse. Bullshit. But she did the same thing to her children. And then it's like, I have a lot to say, but I'm not going to say it, right? Because I'm going to respect people's privacy. But the evidence speaks for itself, right? See, I'm of the school of thought that people don't need to sit up here and hold on to family secrets. That's debilitating. People need to speak out, to speak up, and to speak the truth, right? In any way, in the best way that you can. That's what's liberating, and that's what we don't have enough of. Yes, there are people who have spoken out and told their story, but there's not enough of that happening. It's more of the fake shit, which you see on social media. People pretending to care, and people pretending to be empathic, and people just going along with the status quo of how they think they should respond in situations that I explained earlier, right? With this timely death, very timely death of this very toxic relationship coach. But yes, my mom, and her way of disciplining me and my sister, and how it went was like, I got punished for things my sister did. My sister got punished for what I did, but I really didn't do anything. I was like a well-behaved child, shall I say. It was my sister who was fucked up, you know. Like, I was quiet. I was, introverted. I was a kind of people pleaser, wanting to just make sure I follow all the rules that my mom had set. And so I remember like getting beat for things my sister did. For example, there was a store called Pick and Save, and my sister was a thief, and my sister was 3 years my senior. And she stole a candy bar. She put it, I think, in my pocket. And then my brother at the time told my mom, because he was like in collusion with my mom, and he told her that we had stole candy, me and my sister. Now, granted, I had my sister's back too, but it was her candy that she wanted to steal from the store. And so she made me and my sister go in the store and take it back in there, and got home and beat our ass. And this is like the ass beating show. People laugh at this shit, but it's nothing to be laughed at. The way it went down reminded me so much of slavery. I remember going to school and looking at those slave movies. The name is evading my memory, but looking at those slave, like, Roots and shit like that, right? And just looking at how, like, the slaves were stripped down, bare bottom, and beaten, and bruises, like, just beaten beyond what they could bear, right? And the bruises and the welts on their body, it spoke volumes. And I remember watching that and identifying with the characters in those movies. Because that was me. That's how I felt. And that's what the reality was, right? And granted, like, it was a cultural thing, right? So this is just how black people black parents discipline their children. And so it's like, it's the norm. So just because something is a norm, people say, oh, it's socially acceptable. It's right. It's not right. I wouldn't do that to my children when I had children. It's wrong on so many levels. And I'm going to talk about that. It's wrong in the sense where, okay, so she would have me and my sister strip down to our underwear, lay across the bed, and her choice weapons were cable cord, extension cord, belt, and she would beat us until she got tired and just keep going, and just it went on and on. And I remember just getting up with just like bruises and welts and some on my neck. And if we had some on our neck, she would have us wear turtlenecks to school in the fucking summertime, yo, to hide the bruises. It was so bad. And my mom, she wasn't loving in a healthy way as I saw it. She was loving in a very unhealthy way. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm saying this to say, and I'm setting up the stage for what I'm going to say next. So bear with me. But she was loving in the way she knew how, right? And she explained to me, my sister, this is how my mother did me. She got beat. And like I say, it would happen on a regular basis, at least once a week, twice a week. Anytime she felt necessary, really. And it can be over the smallest thing. It can be over just how I spoke, right? And me and my sister had this running joke where we would be like 7:30, just making a joke on wordplay. And my mom was like, what? 7 what? And we'd be like, it's 7:30. And we'll get a beating just for that. Just silly shit, right? So with that, I think, yes, I mean, it's clear, it goes without saying that it created this distance, this animosity, this hatred. Like, I'm honest enough to admit it. My sister, that's her story, right? Everybody can tell their own story, but this is mine. I hated it so much to the point where, yes, I wished her death. And this is how it relates to the story here, what we're talking about in this video regarding KS. Like, I used to pray to God that the truth's always been out. It ain't coming out. You know, you think about me and you truly watch my videos, and you'll see that I speak truth. I don't hold back. You probably just stumbled across this based on the title and based on what's happening on social media, and so it has your attention. But if you really pay close attention, I speak truth. That's just me. I speak truth so much to the point where, yes, like it creates division between me and other people on so many levels. And I'm going to go into the next story that's related to this, that as it relates to my time out in Los Angeles, California. But yes, it created this hatred, and I used to pray that my mom is dead, you know. I used to pray accusing him of mother hatred, then exposing her own. No, yes, I can see when men hate women, and they hate women because they hate their mothers. And this isn't anything, this is not new information, you know. But yes, I do think that he took to berating women because he hates women and he hates his mother. So what is your argument here? I don't get on here to argue with you. And if you're going to be disrespectful towards me, you're going to get blocked. So make another comment and see what happens. It just goes that, it's just that simple. You can respect my story and listen, or you can just be blocked and be silenced. Doesn't matter to me. But going forward, it created like this dissension, this hatred from myself towards my mother, where yes, I used to pray and wish that she was dead. I used to pray. This is when I was like in elementary school. I used to pray that she would get in a car accident. I was just like, please, God, let her die. Let her die, because the pain was so excruciating. Getting those beatings were so excruciating. I think people miss the point when a person is expressing themselves and telling their story. It kind of goes over the black person's head, right? Because a lot of black people, especially you watching, lack empathy, right? So I'm sharing this part of myself and my experience to connect, right? And to as an example, to show a lesson, which oftentimes people just don't get. But it's clear though, because the lesson is also in people's reaction to the story and what you're hearing, right? If you're hearing a story where a person has suffered pain and abuse and your response is judgment, right? It goes to show that you're also dealing with what I'm dealing with, right? That there's a part of you that can relate to my experience, but the way you're relating to me is revealing on, it's very telling on the things that you've dealt with in your life, right? I'm not gonna go there because it's not about you, but I have to point that out because this is a recurring theme that I see in the black community. This is not my first time getting on here. You probably stumbled across my channel or my page, and I'm new to you, but this isn't new to me. I've done this, right? I'm a vlogger, so I do this, and a common theme that I see when I get on here is black people not being sensitive to other black people's stories, right? And not being empathic, being very judgmental, being very insensitive, and being very demeaning, which says a lot about their own experience, right? So continuing, shall I say, sometimes it's just best to sit and observe, and then you can make your own interpretation. That's your right. You have a right and a freedom to make your own interpretation, but just know your interpretation is also through your own psychological lens, right? Through your own experience that you went through in your life. So, yes, this was in grade school where I remember praying for my mom's demise. I'm just like, oh, I wish she died. Of course, she never died. My mom is just very resilient, very strong woman, strong-willed. It's like she never died. And I'm just like, oh, why can't she die? If she just died, I don't have to deal with this pain anymore. And I felt like the beatings that I got, it's not that I'm saying that you shouldn't discipline your children. And there are many different ways, obviously, to discipline. I'm not saying that there are not consequences that children should get when they misbehave and do things. I'm saying that with my mom, it was overbearing. It was too much, right? It was too strict, and much of it was just her acting out her intergenerational trauma. Doing to me what was done to her, just being passed down from one generation to the next, right? And so I knew I can feel her pain being projected onto me, right? As I was dealing with this, right? Having to be disciplined by her. I can feel like she was just doing it out of her own pain. Because there's no way, and this is how you know, right? You know that if it's disproportionate, right? If a person's treatment towards you is disproportionate to whatever happened, right? To the stimulus that whatever happened, you know that there's something else going on, right? So yes, me and my sister may have done things that, went against the rules or her expectations, but the way she responded, the way she handled it, it was completely disproportionate to what happened. It's just like, no, that did not warrant that. And the level of energy she would devote towards that, to the extent where, like I said, I didn't feel that my mom loved me in the way that she should have, right? Love in her eyes is, okay, there's a roof over your head, there's food on your table, I'm disciplining you and making sure that there's consequences for your actions, so that you don't get out there in the world and have these false expectations and just doing whatever. And that rationale, I mean, I can get it from different perspectives, right? It's different ways that a person can look at any situation. And there can be truth to that perspective, right? Her argument was, I'm doing this to you so that the white man don't do this to you, right? The white man will do worse to your ass. The white man will put his foot on your neck and all of this, rhetoric that she would go on to say. And I'm like, and dealing with that, right, and hearing that come from my mom, and seeing that that was her only side, right? It's not like there was a balance, I've seen parents who, yes, they're firm with their kids, they're disciplined, like maybe with their spanking or timeout or withdrawing certain things from them, in healthy ways, and they also balance that with hugs and kisses and I love you. And I didn't get that from my mom. I did get that from my dad though, so it was a kind of a weird balance when you think about it, right? Because I would like to say that balance should come from each parent, right? So a balance of the tough love, the discipline, and also the hugs, the kisses, the I loved you should be in each parent. But it was just like my mom was the extreme parent of, extreme discipline. And then my dad was a complete opposite, very permissive and loving and spoiled me to death, and it was just a weird dichotomous relationship between my mom and my dad. So with that, I remember my mom saying, given that, that happened between me and my mom, and that's, I felt that. It's not so much, oh, that's how I interpreted it, right? Because if a person can go to say, okay, oh no, that's just how you experienced it, that's how you interpreted that, but that's not really what happened, that's gaslighting. And that's not healthy either. And so with that happening the way it did, and of course that being my experience, of course it's going to create like this divide, right, between me and my mom. And that's always my mom, so I think sometimes people get it mistaken too, right? My mom is my mom. It's not that, okay, I don't love her. I just love her in a different way. And it goes without saying, it's just like, as a parent, maybe, yes, it's clear that parents treat their children based on how they know, what they know, right? People just do what they know. If you know better, you do better, right? But it should go without saying that if you do certain things, expect consequences, right? Expect certain things to follow suit, right? Based on your own behavior, based on what you choose to do, based on your approach to parenting, right? So if you abuse children, right? If you abuse your children, if you mistreat your children, or if you treat them in a certain way that they don't feel loved, that is not loving, then you can only imagine what kind of energy that's going to engender in that child, right? What kind of perspective that child is going to have towards you growing up. And that's essentially what happened. It's like me and my mom, people ask me about, oh, how's your mom, or how's your relationship with your mom? And I'm just like, yo, that's my motherfucking mama, first of all. Like, I have to make it clear, don't get it mistaken, because sometimes people can take things out of context, right? That's my motherfucking mom. I go to bat for my mom, but at the same time, yes, there is a certain awkward relationship between me and my mom. My sister is definitely much more closer to my mom. My sister is 3 years older than me, and she came from me and my sister don't share the same father, right? So she came from a separate relationship that my mom had with my sister's dad. And then my mom met my dad, and then my dad took on me, and my dad took on my sister essentially. So my dad, raised a child that biologically wasn't his. But there's this awkward relationship between me and my mom, and there is an emotional distance, right? There is an emotional cutoff, as they would say in family therapy, between me and my mother. And it came from her. It's like we inherit our parents' energy, right? It's intergenerational, right? They can call it intergenerational trauma or cycles or whatever have you. But it's just it's passed down. It's like you do unto your children, and then you expect them to just grow out and become something different, right? It's like that's not going to happen. You know, much of how a child becomes and grows to be is a reflection of how they were raised, right? As children, how they were nurtured or lack thereof as children. And so if there is this emotional cutoff towards my mother, it's like, okay, it came from somewhere. It's just not like, okay, she's an evil person. Though I can be very evil. But I don't see evil as a bad thing per se in and of itself. Right? It's all relative. But yes, there is a certain type of emotional cutoff, I would say. And I think it just came from my mom's own energy, her own disposition, her own nature. You know, that's just kind of how my mom is. And that is a factor of her own upbringing. And a person's upbringing is not just relegated to their family upbringing, right, or the family dynamic in the household in which they grew up in, but it's contextual. It's, you know, it's based on what was happening in the social context of that upbringing, right, in that household, right, in the environment, essentially, what was happening. My mom, of course, grew up during the civil rights movement, right? There's a lot of shit happening, right? We don't have to unpack all of that, but it was just a lot of things happening, which my mom did share with me, you know, what it was like growing up in the times of segregation. And it's still happening. I think it's interesting where I get a comment on my post where there is this white man, and a lot of white people have been following me because of the videos I've been making on alternative sexual lifestyle and cuckolding. But this white man, and what was the post I made? I can't remember. But he goes to comment, it was like, oh, that was a past and things are changed. And that to me irks me to hear when people say things have changed, because no, things haven't changed. It's just taken a different shape, right? It's just like water is water, you know. If you put it in a rectangular shaped glass, or if you put it in a round glass, it's still going to be water. And that's pretty much what racism is, right? Racism is kind of like here to stay. It's just taking a different form. And the effects of racism and racial oppression is here to stay, right? So for a person to say that, oh, it's no longer here, no, it's here. These conversations, I think, I come to you guys to have these conversations just to be very frank and open. But tying that into another story that I've shared with you guys before, which sometimes the way you guys comment makes me hesitant to share, because anytime a person comes with judgment, right, and then followed by judgment is ridicule and this and that and finger pointing, like, you can't have a progressive conversation. That's going to halt whatever it was that I was going to share. And you can see how there was a shift, you know, in my expression when I read your comment. And that's why sometimes I feel better when no one is watching my videos, because I can just be, right? And then, you know, I download my videos that I record live on Facebook from Facebook and upload them to YouTube. So I think sometimes it's better when I'm not interrupted by other people's perception of what I have to say. Though, you know, yes, I like to go live here because with Facebook, like, you can create however long video you want to create. So I use it as like a place to just record, essentially, my videos. And if people, you know, join the live and they watch and they interact, okay, cool. Especially if I make it an interactive video where I'm actually soliciting your advice or your perspective. But the majority of the time, I'm really not. Majority of the time, I really don't care about what you think. Though, yes, I say I welcome you guys to share your perspective in the comments, but honestly, I'm not impacted by what you think. I really don't care. I'm not asking for your perspective. I'm getting on here to share my perspective. I only care about what you have to say if I see that your comment first of all, takes into account respecting what I have to say. So it goes both ways. But I was like this close to blocking you, and I see that you're still watching. But I was this close to blocking you because of your wording, right? To say that I'm accusing him. I'm not accusing him of anything. The evidence is there. What he did is there. It's not accusing him of anything and trying to tie it to what I'm saying regarding my mother in that way. I'm not accusing him of hating women. He clearly hates women. This man, any man, it's evident. It's very evident in his lifestyle, right? And I don't know if you guys saw the video of this man in bed with another man. And there's a lot of research and a lot of homosexual men, the ones who are honest enough to admit, a lot of homosexual men, they're just living in their own lie, right? Like, this space is about honesty. Put it on the table, be real. That's how I was raised. That's how my mom is. Just be real with shit. Don't hold back. Put it on the table. But a lot of homosexual men, they don't have the balls to talk about their upbringing and their, historical background and some trauma that they experienced. But some do, right? And research has even shown this, that a lot of men who are gay, who are homosexual or bisexual, they do have histories of sexual abuse. You can see it. Like, for people who truly are in tune with themselves, right, who know themselves, such as myself, as a change maker, as a therapist, as a psychologist, and also just people who are in tune with other people, just humanity. Like, you can sniff a person, right? You can tell when a person has been abused. You can tell when a person has been sexually abused. Like, you can tell a person's background, their history. You can see it. For me, I can smell it. I can see it. You can just see it, like, in their body and everything, right? You can tell when a person, like I said, experiences trauma. You can tell when a person has grown up in a household where there was hatred, right? Because it manifests itself in a different way, right? If it's not checked, if it's not dealt with, right? So, of course, there's always ways to check yourself, right? And check, the things that need to be worked on within yourself. But a lot of people don't. And so it was evident that he took to his platform to kind of regurgitate, right, and throw up his traumas and dump it onto women. I am not a person who is persuaded or who is entertained by what's popular, right? Like, I don't even watch TV as much, right? I don't have cable, Netflix. Like, I'm not caught up in what everyone else is caught up in. It should be very clear that I'm a very different type of individual. I'm very spiritual. I'm in tune with myself, in tune with the universe, and in tune with nature. And I've been this way since I was a little girl, right? I'm not brainwashed by the status quo and what's happening, right? So I can see that in people's response to what happened to Kevin Samuels, rightfully so, which I said I wasn't going to say his name, but I had to just put it out there, that I can see that people are acting out of a program. And they are acting out of kind of robotic ways, right? And they look over and see, okay, oh, well, most people are lamenting, so let me lament, right? They do what they see other people doing. And I've never been that person. I don't act out of that program. I'm a person who's a free thinker, and I use my brain, which a lot of people don't do, right? So they're just kind of jumping on the bandwagon for what I see. They're just jumping on the bandwagon, right? It's like they don't know how to respond, so they look to see how everyone else is responding, right? And like I said, the general consensus is people are displaying this fake empathy. Granted, some people is real empathy, right? Because they really believe that this person, KS, meant well, and he's speaking facts, and he's telling it like it is. But no. No. For people who are seeing from a different eye, right? Different perspective. In your third eye, you can see that the destruction that is happening with his words. Like he was an agent in the destruction of the black community. And speaking negativity towards a black woman. He's an agent. I don't condone that. I don't support that. Hell, the fuck no. I don't have any remorse for a person who intentionally does wrong to the black community. You goddamn right. I don't. And I think that is a healthy perspective. If anything, yes, I think we need to come together. There's already enough woes against the black community. There's already enough destruction. There's already enough white supremacy at play that has created division between the black man and the black woman. So let's try to find ways to nurture a healthy perspective. That's what I'm about. That's not the popular way to go about it, though. You notice that? Do you notice that the black conscious leaders, though they started out with good intentions, right? But that's not what sells on social media. That's not what's going to get a whole bunch of likes. It's like they have to deviate from that good message, right? And good intentions. Slightly deviate. Not too much, but slightly. Right? You can see it in the narrative. You can see it in the slogans. For example, with Dr. Umar Johnson. I'm an avid supporter of Dr. Umar Johnson and the FDNG Academy. But you can definitely see it. It's just like, okay, he's definitely acting out of a program for what he thinks is the cool thing to say, right? What's going to get him, a lot of views and what's going to keep money coming into his pocket. The universe sees all of this. So there's a reason why his mission to fulfill this purpose of opening this African-centered school, it's a reason why. Right? For a person to be so deeply rooted and deeply connected to the ancestors and the spiritual realm, you would think by now there would be some kind of activation of power to manifest this vision. But it hasn't, and it's not going to be. You cannot sit up here and use the ancestors, and you cannot use the spiritual energy. You cannot hide behind the face of what you're promoting as, a good cause, and connecting with the ancestors and operating from a good heart, which is not right, because it's very easy for a person to get derailed off that path, right? I don't know if you guys noticed this, but pay attention. You guys really have to watch a person and really pay attention, just as closely as you're watching me. Right? And pay attention, right, to when a person, a leader, such as Dr. Umar Johnson or Brother Polite, for example, who sets out on a good mission, right, because they are black and they feel it. They are negatively impacted by what's happening on this systemic level in the black community. They feel it. They feel moved, right? They're called to do something about it. And they move in that direction initially. But then what's dangling over here, though, on the other side, right? There's always that other side that's dangling. It's very convincing. They get pulled and derailed. To think that they are immune, or anyone is immune for that matter, of the infiltration, right? Immune to the programming, MK Ultra programming. This might be too much for y'all, right? When you start talking like this, people will just be like, oh, this person is crazy. No, it's not. Anybody who studies psychology, who studies political science, knows, right? So some things ain't meant for all ears. But moving forward, so yes, as I was saying, it does create a certain type of person, right? It does create a certain type of dynamic between people, and that's something that I've just recognized, right? And I've shared that, I've talked about that before. This is not a new conversation. I'm just kind of tying it in to the way I feel, my sentiments towards this person, KS, and towards people's response to this person, and this whole fake empathic response versus me just rejoicing and being happy for what's happening in the universe, on a systemic level, more so than, oh, his death. I don't see it as, oh, he died, right? I don't see it in that perspective. Though, yes, his avatar, died, but I don't see it as he died necessarily. I just see it as there's a shift that happened, cosmically speaking, and that needed to happen. And it's just like, it's just reassuring. So my rejoice, my relief, along with other people who get it, right? It's just a relief. It's like, it's just like a little nudge. You know, you get like those little nudges from the universe. It's just like a little whisper, just like a reminder to say, no, we see what's happening, right? Because sometimes maybe we forget, maybe we feel like, oh, evil is winning, right? So it's like a nudge to say, oh no, evil is not winning. So that's the rejoicing part, from a spiritual perspective. That's why we rejoice. It's just like, no, evil isn't winning. He got his just due. So, tying it to, I said I was going to give you guys a story about when I was in LA, right? This is when I was working towards my doctoral degree. And I've told this story before too, where I talked about empathy. And I just had to go back and remind myself, do a refresher, where I went on my YouTube channel. It's like, I know I made a video on empathy, right? Because I like to connect the dots, right? And all of this is related, right? We're talking about empathy, right? Having compassion. Some of the words that were left in comment section, in response to the timely death of this energy, this character here, as we know as KS. The word empathy was coming up, right? And compassion, and it made me think about my own empathy, right? Or lack thereof, as one of my supervisors had said in LA. So in working towards a PhD program, there are different clinical rotations that we do. And we have supervisors, we get lots and lots of supervision, almost like more than enough. I've said at one point, like, I've had way enough supervision, right? And I had a supervisor. I was working at this predominantly black clinical site in South Central LA, and there was a supervisor who said, she felt like it was an energy. You could feel it, It's just like when I tell you guys, and I know I'm not the only one. I know that you guys have experiences too, where you can see something bad is going to happen. You can feel when something bad is going to happen. You just know it, right? And you can feel when there is not good energy between you and a person. And I felt that. Despite what it looked like on the surface, right? Despite the smiles and whatever words were coming out that person's mouth, it's just like you read energy, right? You see beyond the bullshit. So I'm reading energy. And I sensed that from day one when I started at that site, that, okay, yeah, something is not going to be right here. Though I was really hopeful and excited about the position working there, because like I said, it was predominantly black, and of course that was in alignment with my passion, right? My clinical focus, my interest, My dissertation was on Black identity, acculturation, implicit racial bias. So working with a predominantly Black population, it would make sense. Like, yes, I'm excited, right, to kind of finally work and get more experience in my niche. And so I was there, really excited about the population, the clients. But of course, there's a supervision component. And I noticed just the dynamic is different in working with these supervisors, right, who were Black women. And granted, I said this before, that I already have this thing, right? Just this thing about Black women. And no figure, of course, you know, the story about my mom, right? Being a Black woman. But I'm more sensitive to that dynamic, right? Which I wouldn't say is a bad thing. I'm very much sensitive to the energy when it comes to Black authoritarian, shall I say. More so authoritarian figures, because authoritarian isn't really healthy. Authoritative is okay, right? Balanced energy with me is okay. But when there's an imbalance, I can pick up on it. And so I remember just the interactions, just the energy was off. And I remember it was the turn. It was so many things happened. I don't really have time to really go into like all the different interactions that happened with me and my supervisors at that site. But I have to share this, that I remember the letter. I could never forget this, right? It's just a stain. It's just something that, you know, a memory, you know, like a pain body memory that you carry with you, which is a good thing, you know. I know sometimes people look at things as bad or good, and for me it's not about really bad or good, but I'm just saying that for the sake of communicating and conveying this to you guys, because I understand how a person's mind can go in that direction. Of it being, a bad thing. It could be a good thing and a bad thing, essentially. That's what I'm saying. And so I recall the letter that she wrote to my school. And she said, like, it was all lies. But there was always truth in lies, too, at the same time, right? And so in a nutshell, she communicated that I lack empathy. And like I said, this is not new. I've shared this before. Being a vlogger, and especially being in the program, my colleagues and my superiors, administrators, all of that, they're aware. So don't think they're not aware, right? A lot of people are aware, especially in my profession, of who I am and my channel, my vlog. So this isn't, don't think this is like something new. This isn't anything new, especially as it relates to like my public support of Dr. Umar Johnson, and how I kind of got pulled up into the whole politics. You know, it's like I said, everything is political, but I kind of got pulled up into what he was dealing with, you know, in terms of people trying to defame his character. And yeah, it kind of got serious where I had to, you know, bring the law in, right, and take upon certain measures to dismantle that whole situation, because they started to attack me, essentially, right, for my public support of Dr. Umar Johnson. The state got involved, and like, yes, all of this, right? So it's like, yeah, they're very much aware of my Facebook page, my YouTube channel, so this is not new information. I just think it's funny, though, right? Because it's funny to me because, like I said, like, I'm very much connected to the universe, and so what's bound to happen is going to happen, right? And sometimes people think they have, in as much that control over a person's destiny or outcome, when really the universe has already decided. That's why I think it's funny, like even with this current situation, like it's completely hilarious to see that people are like, oh my, I can't believe it, I'm so shocked. You're shocked. I think honestly, and I can really appreciate what's happening and looking at the response. It's more, to me, it's about the response. It's not so much about the death as it is the response of people, right? The public. That's what I tune to, right? Because it lets you know the energy, it lets you know the wave, it lets you know, like, where do we stand, right? It lets you know the temperature of people, their minds, right? And I'm reading the comments. People are shocked. But how can you be shocked? If you're really in tune, you're not shocked, right? If you're really, people say, oh, I'm spiritual, I'm connected. But how connected are you if you're shocked? Like, it takes one to really understand, to really get it. Which that privilege has not been afforded to a lot of you guys. It just has not. It hasn't. So, yeah, when I get it, because I can see myself in your shoes. I was in your shoes. And so, being in your shoes and looking at a person like me, it seems like, this girl is like tripping, right? Or even other people who resemble myself. Like, they're tripping. What's wrong with them, right? Because you're not in that mind state, and you're not, you don't have that that spiritual bank, right? You don't have that spiritual leverage to really quite understand, to really grasp it. But when you do, it's just so comforting, right? It's just in a very comforting position. So definitely, it's not at my surprise. But I find it interesting because nothing can stop what's already ordained in the universe. Nothing can stop what's already ordained in the universe. And so I see that her intention, and it's funny, it's like, I look back, and like I said, I've told this story before, but I look back, and I can just sit back and just, like, exhale, right? Because I hate to say it, but it's just like, untouchable. Definitely untouchable. It's just a certain degree of peace, right, that passes all understanding. I know I'm speaking in, like, parables, and, I do that intentionally, understand that. So I'm very, very much self-aware. Don't get it mistaken, of what I'm doing and my approach and my process. But it's funny looking back. You don't have to be completely silent. Did I scare you? I see that you're still watching. Flynn. Guillermo. Flynn. I see that you clearly still watching. You don't have to be scared to comment. I just say that to warn you. Because, yes, I see that people, social media and this internet shit, people hide behind screens and they get on here and they just say whatever. And it's good. You can speak your mind and say whatever, but not on my goddamn platform. You can't. You say whatever on your platform. You can get on there and create a whole video if you want. Just be careful what you say about me. I'm just saying though. People gotta be careful. Gotta be careful. I tell people this. I don't do roots. I don't do voodoo, none of that shit. But hey, the spirits who are protecting me do. So just be careful. I laugh though, to myself, because when you can see kind of karma being played out, right? So you guys gotta be careful and be calculated in what you do if you're thinking with a rational mind. I don't mind you sharing things and commenting, interacting. Feel free to do that. I encourage you guys to do that, but I also encourage you guys to be mindful. Just be respectful. That should go without saying, though, right? It's been raining here in New York, y'all. It's been raining here in New York. And I actually like it because it reminds me of Florida. It It reminds me of home. I'm just taking a little nice mental break. I do this from time to time. As I'm sharing things with you guys. I'm taking you guys on a nice roller coaster through my own experience in life and through my own lens. It makes me a good writer. And I said that I'm going to pick up my pen and start back writing. Definitely. So, are y'all ready? I think it's funny because, like, for the new people who, like, find my channel, they somehow think that the things I share is, like, new. But it's not new. Like, yo, go to my YouTube channel, right? I know I have to have at least 1,200 videos. You know, they're vlogs. A lot of them are just kind of me just taking the camera around and just showing, you know, my experience. Doing walking vlogs or checking out new restaurants and, you know, things like that. But then, you know, a good portion of them, you know, is me getting on here and sharing my perspective on different topics. And it's just me vlogging my life, right? Which I find to be very freeing, and it's a hobby, you know. I don't do it for pay, but my videos are monetized, so I do get paid. But that's not what I'm doing it for, though. So, are you guys ready? Now, I said this before, like I made a whole video on this, and going back, I haven't left the story. I just taken a break from it. But I remember that letter, like my supervisor sent to the school, and she had a list of things. It was like 3 things, right? She pointed out, and I'm like, this bitch is lying. Just all lies, yo. Just complete lies. But then I think, like, that might be true, right? So one of the points was, she said, Danielle lacks empathy. And you can't say something like that about a person like me, who's very analytical. Because I'm going to break everything you say down. And I think that was another problem, too, right? Because if you're going to say something in supervision, right, in a live supervision session with me, then you have to be able to provide substantial information, right, or evidence to back up what you're saying, because I'm going to challenge you, right? And this is just how like, some things are just personality, right? I think sometimes people look at a person and like, oh, well, you're this way because of what you've been through, but some things are just personality, and some things are based on a person's experience. As a clinician, a wise clinician is able to kind of tease apart, is it necessary to be able to tease apart what's attributed to a person's personality, right? Or what's attributed to a person's behavior based on their experience, right? And behavior being learned, which is something that essentially a person can unlearn, right, in therapy. I guess on one hand it does matter to be able to make that distinction, because in making that distinction you save yourself time, right? Like unnecessary time that a lot of clinicians devote, a lot of energy they expend to trying to change a person. That is not going to change. Many of those, I work with a lot of those now at the hospital where I work. A lot of people, you know, have personality disorders, as they call it, right? I say the quotation, disorder, right? Because it's just their personality, right? Is it a disorder? Who's to say, right? You know, we have this tendency, I think, in our culture here in America, where we assign labels to people who are different, right? And you know, if you're similar to what most or majority people are like, then you're normal. But if you're dissimilar, then you're abnormal, right? And, I guess it just makes things a lot simpler for people in understanding other people. But yeah, sometimes I think it comes at the detriment of just mislabeling people, right? Or castigating people, putting them in a box. But yeah, I think I laugh because, yeah, I work with individuals who have been diagnosed with personality disorder, and just seeing the struggle, the struggle, the struggle of like well-experienced, well-credentialed psychologists and psychiatrists and medical specialists trying to understand and maneuver through these difficult patients who have personality disorders, and you're trying to change behavior, and it's just like, yo, some behavior is resistant to change, and some things is just not behavioral. Some things are just rooted in a person's personality, essentially. I had to throw that in there. But yeah, so in this interaction with my supervisor and supervision, she's just getting frustrated. So first of all, I had 2 supervisors at this site, right? So it's a year-long clinical rotation. Within a PhD program, there are 3 standard, right? 3 standard clinical rotations. 3 1-year-long clinical rotations, right? And then there's the pre-doc internship. So really there's 4, but it's kind of separate. Separate in the sense that the 3 clinical rotations, which they call practicum rotations in California, it's unpaid. It's only 20 hours a week. The 5th year is the pre-doc internship, which you can do anywhere, you know, in the country. The first 3 are local, right? And the 4th being the internship, you can do anywhere in the country, and it's paid. So that's the difference. I just want to kind of clarify that, because I know some of you guys don't know, because you're not fucking PhD students, or you know, you're not in the realm of psychology. So I just wanted to make that clear. And so this rotation was my 2nd one. Seems like it's so long ago. It's been kind of a while. We're in 2022, and this was 2018, I think. Yeah, some time has went by, right, since this happened. And a lot of things have happened, obviously, transpired since then, clearly. So sometimes I'm thinking, like, trying to recall the events and the timing of things. You didn't have to tell me that. I have a daughter working in your field. I have been advising her to let it go. That's a whole nother video right there. I actually made a video recently like, should I quit my job as a clinical psychologist? Not necessarily like the career, but the particular job where I work. That's a separate video. I made a whole separate video on that. But my treatment team leader and everybody else on my team is just like, no, don't leave. Like, no, this is where you're supposed to be, whatever. I'm like, y'all know me. I can care less either way, right? I just move differently. I don't worry about anything. I just maneuver through the world, because I feel like what's going to happen has already happened in the spirit realm. And that's just a different way of looking at things in life. Time is an illusion, right? So, it's, yeah. But anyway, going back. So, where was I? So, yeah, that being my 2nd clinical rotation, and I'm having supervision with, you know, my supervisor. And supervision is, like, very frequent. It's, like, twice a week. Probably more than that. It's, like, a lot of meetings with your supervisor, right? to discuss clinical cases. And for me, it was not even so much discussing clinical cases as the focus being on me. Like, I was like the focus of the fucking supervision, right? Which I felt was kind of overstepping boundaries in a way. It was a weird dynamic. I have never experienced this. I didn't expect to experience this where my supervisor, like I said, I had two. So the first semester was one supervisor, and then the second semester we would rotate to get a different supervisor. And I never experienced this. Out of all the supervision, I got a lot of supervision. I'm going to hold off until I read your comment, right? Because if I don't, I'm just going to keep getting distracted. But I've had a lot of supervisors, a hell of a lot, right? During my course in this program. And I had never experienced this dynamic with the supervisor. Now, granted, most of my supervisors have been like white men. So, of course, I'm not going to experience that dynamic. White men somehow love me. I don't know. They, beyond love me, they worship me. My male supervisors, that is. It's weird. But, yeah. So, with this dynamic, with this black female supervisor, it was just, she feared me. And I promise you, I went in there respectfully. I went in there with confidence, but an open mind to learn. I didn't go in there trying to challenge, but I get it that my personality can be challenging. I think it's my energy. I don't want to say my personality. My energy can be challenging. Like, you're going to feel my energy. Well, you should feel everyone's energy, right? Everyone has an energy, kind of filled energy type. But you're going to feel my energy. Maybe she felt my energy. And she, like my supervisor, the first one I had during this clinical rotation, she would miss sessions. She would come late. First, it started out with her coming late to our meetings, right? We had a scheduled time to meet. She would come late. Then it evolved to she just would miss. Not just a session. She would take off of work. Like, I know we missed. I know, I get it. Like, we call off on days, right? We missed days. But it was like a pattern where it was on the day that we were supposed to do supervision, like, she would just not show up. And she had her own private practice, too. And it was just, like, kind of concerning to me. It was just like, damn. I don't want to take it personal, but it's just like, okay, this is kind of impacting, like, my training, right? Like, if my supervisor is missing sessions, like, what's happening? Like, and then it came to surface that she finally, I was so happy when we had this discussion. Because I'm a kind of person, like, face it. Face the music, okay? Face your demons. If I'm your demon, then face me, okay? So we finally, and it was towards the end of that semester. So I'm like, how do we go through the entire semester with this tension, right? Clearly there is some, transference happening that wasn't being discussed. And I wanted to discuss it. Like I said this, my advisor at my school, who became my dissertation chair, is a white woman. We sat down, we talked about this, and she was like, well, do you know why? What's going on? Like, what is it? I said, honestly, I think it's some transference happening, and I'm open and willing to talk about it. Y'all don't see, I'm very transparent. Like, let's do it, right? Don't point of running away. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't have the courage to address it until the end of the semester. So, could you imagine, the semester is like 4 months, going the entire 4 months. And this, like, elephant in the room. And, like, it got bad where she did not even feel comfortable sitting down. She would not even sit down in the room. She could not sit down with me. What kind of supervision is that? She would stand. She would stand by the door. She could not sit down. It's just like, yo, this is your office and you don't want to sit down. Sit your ass down. What the fuck? She didn't want to sit down. And then we had a discussion finally. We had the meeting and she was just like, yeah, I feel like every time I come in supervision with you, it's just like going to war. How is it going to war though? Because I think this is the thing. People are used to people agreeing with them. So the moment a person disagrees, it feels like war. I get it. But I didn't disagree with her. I just presented my perspective on things. Like, I'm very calculated in how I speak and how I interact. It should be clear. Right? So, it's not that, oh, I gotta wrap this video up. And I also have an engagement I'm about to go to in a little while. But it's like, what time is it? Okay, perfect. It's not that, like, I went in there, like, challenging her or, like, disagreeing with her. I went in there, like, giving my perspective. Now, this was, like, 4 years ago, so I'm trying to recall what the fuck were we talking about. What the hell? Yeah, it's like I'm just a different person, and I don't think she liked my way of telling a story. Which my supervisor now actually give me space to just be me and to express myself. But yeah, so she wanted me to discuss a client case how she wanted me to discuss it, and I wouldn't do that way, right? She was just like, I want you to just, when you come in here, I want you to just say this, that, and that's it. I didn't do it that way, right? I said it how I wanted to say it. So she was like, you got to go all around the world to just tell me about the client. It's just like, no, I'm telling you from my process and my perspective. And so, yeah, we just would disagree. We bumped a lot of heads, right? She had her perspective, I had mine, and instead of us merging our perspectives together, her rightfully understanding my perspective, she didn't want to do that. She wanted to impose her conceptualization of whatever happened in session that I was sharing with her regarding my client. She wanted to impose that onto me, and the fact that she was not receptive to my perspective, I didn't give a fuck about her perspective. Right? So then I end up, come the beginning of the second semester, the first day, I end up getting a new supervisor who was the fucking director of the program, right? Who was a higher position than my first supervisor. And I remember my first supervisor making a joke saying, oh, you moving up in the world. And this was like, as she was like handing me over to my supervisor. This was like the first day of the switch, right? And then I go and meet with her. And then I felt like when I walked into her office, I'm just like, yeah, something about to go down. Something don't feel right. And she was typing. I remember she was typing. And I'm just like, I saw it happening. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but she was typing. I'm like, yeah. But she had already had this emotion, right? The letter to my school. But anyway, to make a long story short, in reflecting on her statement about me lacking empathy, and like I said, I'm not going to go into detail. I made a whole video on my response to that and the whole deal about empathy. And it's not that a person doesn't lack empathy. There's no such thing as lacking empathy, right? That means that you don't have any empathy. I would like to say that I have selective empathy towards certain things and people, right? And in the context of therapy, you don't always have to show that you're empathic towards someone, right? Like, I say that wrong, right? I don't mean that you don't always have to show it, but in a way you don't really always have to show it, because therapy can take the form of many different techniques and approaches depending on your school of thought and your theoretical approach that you embody. But I said this in my video that just because a client, for example, is feeling hurt or is feeling anger or is feeling jealousy doesn't mean like I have to feel that right? Because that's essentially what empathy is. I don't have to feel any of my clients' emotions, right? In fact, I think it's better to be centered in my own emotion, right? I can identify. It's like a person can identify what a person feels and not have to feel what they're feeling. And even there is a theorist, a marriage and family theorist. I forget the name. Is it Minuchin? Who was it? My professor told me this. It was a guy. And they agree with me. Men agree with me, right? But I took this situation back to my professor in my program who was teaching my marriage and family therapy class. And I said to him, like, yo, can you believe that my supervisor said I like empathy? And he laughed. He was just like, well, actually, who did he say? Bowen? Minuchin? Which one? Is it Bowen? He said one of those theorists actually would agree with you, Danielle. And they have the stance that a therapist should be very much centered in their own emotionality and not be so emotionally reactive, right? Or empathic to the extent where you are feeling what the patient is feeling in that moment, right? Because you're going to get moved. Like, that's how you get manipulated as a therapist, right? Because you have patients that will use that shit. Use your own empathy against you in the session and manipulate the whole entire session where they can create this emotional, intense feeling, right, within themselves, triggering an emotional response within you. Right? And so before you know it, both of y'all are fucking off kilter and are caught up in these emotions, and you're not even able to think clearly through the situation to navigate towards a healthy and adaptive solution. So let me tie this up. Perfect timing. I'm at 5%. But in response to that, because she had made me so angry because I felt like she was trying to paint me in a negative light, to that extent, I felt so angry towards this woman that, I can't begin to divulge what I wanted to do to her. But it was so many thoughts in my mind, and I had to think consequentially that if I act upon those thoughts, I would be in prison. Do I want to spend the rest of my life in prison? Hell the fuck no. Especially not in California. So, I chose a high road. Long story short. But, yes, I do think that it's interesting to see, like, yes, how a person's upbringing can play into, like, how they relate to other people. And as far as that guy, nobody have empathy for that shit. Good. He's good as dead, and he should have been dead. What? Psychology majors develop psychological disturbances. Child, I'm about to block this person, for real. I'm about to block this person. Or should I block her? First of all, is she black? Okay, maybe she can stay. I don't know. So this person is saying that she has a daughter in the field of psychology, and she's been telling her daughter to let it go. And then her comment follow-up was saying, psychology majors develop psychological disturbances. No. Psychology majors don't develop no fucking psychological disturbances. The funny thing is that people are drawn to psychology to better understand the inner workings of their own mind, right? And to understand their own behavior. Go figure. And why do they want to understand it? Because it's very complex, right? So it's not that studying psychology creates a disturbance in you. No. So studying psychology further highlights whatever disturbance is already operating within you, right? So that you could be able to have language to talk about those disturbances, right? Or whatever the fuck is going on with you. That's what psychology is. It doesn't make you disturbed. Though I think there are parts of psychology that are not necessarily conducive to the betterment of people, right? Historically speaking. They have a museum out in Los Angeles. It's on Sunset Boulevard. I took pictures. I went there. I took pictures. I have a whole album on Facebook, and it shows some very grotesque things that happened historically in the field of psychology and psychiatry. You know, things that is sad, but things that we learn from too, right? So I do think there are certain aspects of psychology in terms of like the approach to wellness and labeling, right? Diagnosing people and labeling people can be very stigmatizing. We just actually had a hospital grand rounds where there was a peer specialist, a woman who is now a social worker, spoke on her experience with bipolar disorder and how debilitating the labeling has been for her, because it shapes how people interact with her, right? And having this label, they see her as this person who is emotionally dysregulated, you know, and can't make sound decisions and all of this. But I do have to end this video because my battery is running out. I feel like I have a lot more to say, but I'm gonna say this, thinking about my mom and how she made this statement, just say that, oh, if she or not if she dies, because we all gonna fucking die, but when she dies, I'm not gonna come to her funeral. I'm like, damn, she might have a point. But no, I'm gonna come because I'm gonna come to support other people. I've looked at death differently. I've always have looked at death differently, in a sense where I don't really cry over a person's body. Like, I'm not gonna be crying because this person is dead. If I'm crying, it's because it is contagious, right? Like, the emotion in the room is so contagious. Other people crying, look at my sister, see her crying, so yeah, my ass gonna start crying, look at my fucking sister crying. But just in my own space and seeing a person dead in a casket, that doesn't spark any kind of emotion in me necessarily. It doesn't spark crying in me. Like, why am I crying over something like that? But nah, I'm gonna come. I told Mom, I'm like, Mom, I'm gonna come to your funeral if I can make it. If I'm not in a different country somewhere, who knows? But anyway, enough about death. I still think it's hilarious that this motherfucker is dead, yo. I'm still celebrating. Let me end this video. I'm gonna catch you guys later. I do love you guys. When I say I love you guys, I do. Okay? Understand that. I do. Peace.